He kept his dancing a secret from Hollywood, but the thing he tried to hide would eventually make him a superstar. Welcome to the rest of the story, my weekly series here on my podcast, Hey Dancer. My name is Miller DeRay, and I'm very excited to have you here. If you're loving this weekly deep dive mini documentary of sorts into the lives of dance legends, do me a favor, or maybe yourself a favor, and subscribe, follow, hit that notification bell so you always know when a new episode drops. I'm a one man team, so the engagement is just sincerely appreciated. And just to remind, this is a dance centered podcast. So while our subject today was a giant movie star with all kinds of credits and movies and acting crazy resume, we're mostly focused on the dance. Okay, let's get into it. He was born on August 18th, 1952, in Houston, Texas. His father, Jesse Wayne, known to everyone as Big Buddy, was the rock the family was built on, a steady and stable presence. He had been a rodeo champion and amateur boxer before becoming a draftsman and later a mechanical engineer. His mother, Patsy, was a choreographer and dance teacher who played a pivotal role in Houston's growing dance community. In the 1960s, she founded the Houston Jazz Ballet Company and opened her own studio as well, where hundreds of young performers trained. Among her students were future dance icons Debbie Allen and Tommy Tune. She also taught dance and choreography for 18 years at the University of Houston. He was the second of five children, the oldest boy, and was known as Little Buddy, as a way of distinguishing him from his father. He and his older sister, Vicky, studied dance with their mother from the time they could walk, spending hours at her studio practically every day. Everyone in the family danced, but his mother saw him differently. In his own words, quote, I was her golden boy, the son who would carry through on her dreams, end quote. He grew up in Houston's Oak Forest neighborhood, a restless, athletic kid who was always in motion. When he wasn't at his mother's studio, he was climbing trees, skating, or testing limits. Once he scaled the roof of a two-story house being built nearby. He called down to the workers and asked how much they'd pay him to jump. When one offered 50 cents, he leapt into a sand pile, rolled through it, and walked away without a scratch. He later said, with all my gymnastics and dance lessons, I knew my body inside and out. Now, for most kids, that kind of intense training in both dance and gymnastics would have been way more than enough to handle. But he didn't stop there. He was seriously training and equally gifted in football, diving, roller skating, martial arts, and even violin. He had an almost preternatural understanding of movement, an instinct for how to use his body that seemed unreal. But in his family, the stage always came first. Dancing, choreography, and teaching were his mother's life's work, and she expected the same focus from him. During those years, he appeared in summer stock productions like The Sound of Music, Gypsy and the Music Man, learning how to sing, dance, and act with professional discipline. By his early teens, that discipline was paying off. He was offered scholarships to study with both the Joffrey Ballet and American Ballet Theater in New York City, opportunities most dancers only dream about. But he actually turned them down, choosing to keep training with his mother and perform with the Houston Jazz Ballet Company she had founded, while still competing in sports that fueled his athletic drive. At Waltrip High School, everything began to converge. He was stronger, faster, more focused, determined to prove himself both on stage and off. He got a leading role in his high school's production of West Side Story, and it was choreographed by none other than his mom. He ran track, roller skated competitively, he did diving, he played football, where his speed and agility made him an all around powerhouse. He was even named All City Halfback. No matter how much he achieved in sports, though, dance remained his center. He'd spend hours at his mother's studio, sweating, pushing, refining, driven by what he later described as a love for the grace and strength of dance and the sheer physical demands of it. Still, in Texas, that love came at a cost. His long hair and work in theater made him a target for bullies, and one attack went too far. After that, his father taught him how to defend himself. By his senior year, it seemed nothing could stop him until that one fateful Halloween night on the football field at Waltrip. It was a big game, playing their crosstown rivals. With scouts in the stands, he was hoping for a football scholarship as there wasn't enough money for him to go to college. But then his dreams came crashing in an instant. He took a hit low on his blind side, and his knee snapped. Most of the ligaments tore, the joint destroyed. Surgery followed, then months in a hip to toe cast. Lying in bed, he could hear his mother crying in the next room, convinced his life was over. But he didn't see it that way. He started working to rebuild himself, lifting, stretching, running, pushing through pain that would have ended most people's careers before they began. His goal? To earn back the gymnastics scholarship he'd received to San Jacinto Junior College. And by fall, he'd actually done it. He was training again, even if his knee still ached, even if it swelled after every practice. He was chasing an Olympic dream, and his coach, Pat Yeager, a former U.S. Olympic coach, told him he had a real shot. But fate, again, had other plans. At a gymnastics meet during warm ups on the rings, he totally misjudged the distance to the mat. He dismounted, landed hard, and felt the same knee explode again. Another surgery, another cast, another round of rehab. And once again, he willed himself back, spending hours at his mother's studio, rebuilding his strength, determined to dance again. That recovery taught him something he'd carry for the rest of his life, that the mind could push the body further than the body ever believed possible. As his time at junior college came to an end, the offers started coming. Invitations to join the Ice Follies, Holiday on Ice, and Disney on Parade. It was a testament to his range. He could skate, tumble, act, and dance at a professional level. Of the three, Disney was the most dance driven. Full castle sets, story projections, and entire sequences built around choreography rather than tricks. So, despite the knee that never stopped aching, he chose that path, the one that kept him closest to the stage. The dancers earned $125 a week. Not bad money for life on the road, but the physical toll was relentless. The Russian Cossack dance alone, deep plies with arms folded and legs flying, kept blowing up his knee. In nearly every city, he ended up in a hospital to have the fluid drained just so he could perform the next night. Still, he didn't stop. Touring with Disney on Parade only deepened what he already knew, that dance wasn't just something he did. It was who he was. He described it as a feeling of complete emotional and physical freedom, as if your spirit is soaring in all directions at once. When the tour ended, fate intervened again. A scholarship offer from the prestigious Harkness Ballet in New York City. So in 1972, at just 20 years old, he packed his bags and left Houston behind, determined to test himself against the best dancers in the world. His new home was a far cry from Texas. The apartment had no light, smelled of mildew, and came with a family of rats. But with a trainee stipend of just $45 a week, it was all he could afford. He picked up extra jobs to survive, but his focus never wavered. Harkness Ballet. He was terrified about how his knee would hold up, but nothing could prepare him for the Harkness regimen. Dancers there were expected to take up to 6 classes a day, pushing their joints and endurance to the limit. On top of that, many were put on a strict 500-calorie diet, lettuce, a few bites of turkey, and vitamin shots. He lost 15 pounds, transforming from a broad shouldered Texan into a lean, precise ballet dancer. Around that time, Gelsey Kirkland, already dancing with both New York City Ballet and American Ballet Theater, was taking there as well, and he often partnered her in pas de deux class. But no amount of discipline could undo the damage to his knee. It began swelling again. He visited Harkness orthopedists constantly to have the fluid drained. One week, the swelling came with a burning sensation, a deep fire inside the joint. Doctors told him it was a staph infection and that if they didn't treat it immediately, he could lose his leg. He begrudgingly stayed in the hospital for treatment and immediately returned to class. He didn't want anyone at Harkness to even consider he might not be strong enough for the rigors of training. Through it all, his reputation grew. He became known as both a strong soloist and a gifted partner, a rare combination in the ballet world. When he wasn't dancing, he worked wherever he could, selling cards at a Hallmark store, lifeguarding at a men's health club, even singing and playing guitar in the clubs of Greenwich Village. And then, in 1974, a familiar face walked back into his life. Lisa had first arrived at his mother's studio at 15 years old, quiet, disciplined, and deeply focused. Now she had earned her own scholarship to Harkness. Her mother wanted her to live at the Barbizon Hotel for Women, but instead she moved into his apartment on West 74th Street. A year later, in June 1975, they married in Houston. He called it the best decision he ever made. But while his personal life was taking root and flourishing, his professional world was faltering. Despite its prestige, the Harkness Ballet collapsed. But he soon joined the Elliott Feld Ballet, one of the most prestigious companies in New York, where every dancer was a soloist and the standard was relentless. But his knee, now diagnosed with arthritis, was deteriorating fast. One doctor told him he had the knee of a 45-year-old man, and in 5 years it would be like that of a 100-year-old. Still, he danced through the pain. During off seasons, he and Lisa auditioned for musical theater. He performed in The Music Man at Paper Mill Playhouse and as Riff in West Side Story on Long Island. In 1975, he made his Broadway debut. He was cast as one of 4 featured dancers in Good Time Charlie, starring Joel Grey and Anne Reinking. Someone else in the cast? A young performer named Jennifer Grey, who would prove a pivotal player in his later dance life. By early 1976, he was on the edge of a breakthrough. The Feld Company was preparing a South American tour, and when the principal male dancer was injured, he was chosen to replace him, with plans to return to New York afterward for a new work featuring Mikhail Baryshnikov. So he pushed through another knee surgery in hopes to stabilize the joint, 10-hour rehearsals, and relentless swelling, determined not to lose this chance. Then, one afternoon, riding his motorcycle along Manhattan's West Side, a car cut him off, and a boy on a bicycle appeared out of nowhere. He swerved hard, skidding across the pavement to keep from hitting them. The boy escaped, luckily, with only a few scratches. He walked away shaken, bruised, but alive. The next day, the weight of it all, the surgeries, the pain, the close call, hit him at once. During a rehearsal break, he told the company director, "I don't think I can do this anymore." She tried to talk him out of it, but his mind was made. And with that, he walked away from the career he had built his whole life around. He later wrote, quote, "With all the amazing experiences I've had as an actor, nothing compares to the joy dancing gives you. Leaving the ballet world created a void in me that I spent years trying to fill." End quote. For the first time in his life, he didn't know what came next. Now the question was simple, or maybe not so simple. What do you do when the dream that defined you disappears? Performing was very much still in his blood, so he began to study acting with Warren Robertson, one of New York's most respected coaches. His wife joined him, also branching out and getting into commercials, theater, anything that kept her creating as well. Money was scarce. They taught jazz, acrobatics, and gymnastics wherever they could. Allentown, Pennsylvania, Ford's, New Jersey, Mount Vernon, New York. They'd ride their motorcycle through snow and rain, teach all day, then head back home to the city. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept them moving, and it kept dancing in his blood. Around that time, a well known talent manager, Bob Lamond, saw potential in him. One of his favorite testing grounds for new clients was a Broadway phenomenon that had already broken records: Grease. Bob scored him an audition, and he won the lead, Danny Zuko. Now, around the time he was starring in the show, Grease became Broadway's longest running musical, so critics came back to review it again, and his performance earned strong notices. Crowds began waiting outside the stage door for him. And for the first time, he was earning real money, performing for packed houses and beginning again to see a future in performing. But the man who'd always lived for the stage was being nudged toward a new one. His manager urged him west, to Hollywood. At first, he resisted. New York is where the creativity is, he said, but as his 8-month run in Greece came to an end, the idea started to make sense. So he and Lisa saved $2,000, packed up their belongings, and booked a one-way flight to Los Angeles, knowing no one really but Bob, the talent manager, and feeling at last that someone was in their corner. For weeks, he went from one interview to the next, 4, sometimes 6 a day, waiting by the phone for something to land. And just when their savings was almost gone, it did. A roller skating movie called Skate Town, USA. He played Ace Johnson, the bad boy on wheels. Leather pants, attitude, and a chance to bring everything he'd ever learned about movement to the screen. He hadn't skated seriously in years, but he trained like an athlete, drilling spins and jumps on any stretch of pavement he could find. His scenes with April Allen, a world champion skater he'd known years earlier in Houston, actually, let him fuse dance and athleticism in a way few performers could. When the film opened, the Los Angeles Times compared his skating to Travolta's disco and Valentino's tango, calling it a confident display of male sexuality. The review went on to mention how he drew gasps and saying he ought to be on his way in films. So yeah, Hollywood was already taking notice. Offers came in fast. Columbia wanted to sign him to a multi-picture deal. Guaranteed money, guaranteed work. But shockingly, he said no. He didn't want to be a teen idol. He wanted to be taken seriously. And so he took small TV parts instead, on shows like The Comeback Kid and MASH. By their second year in Los Angeles, he and his wife were broke, living off the oranges from a backyard tree, scraping together change for a jar of peanut butter and a loaf of bread. They wondered if they'd made a mistake leaving New York. And then, like something out of a movie, the phone rang. A new TV show, The Renegades. He booked a leading role. The work led to The Outsiders. Francis Ford Coppola was directing, and every young actor in Hollywood had fought for a spot. The auditions themselves were mayhem, staged brawls on a soundstage designed to see who could embody the rawness Coppola wanted. When filming began, he moved through it like a dancer, instinct, rhythm, control, even in chaos. There was choreography planned for the film's climactic rumble, but once the cameras rolled, it turned into a real muddy free-for-all. He taught the other greasers a few gymnastics moves to use in the fight scenes, including showing a young Tom Cruise how to do a backflip. For a performer whose life had always revolved around movement, It was the perfect blend of physicality and storytelling, and the first time he began to glimpse what that could look like on film. Momentum was building. Then came Red Dawn, his first true leading role. Director John Milius ran the set like a boot camp, calling himself the general and naming him Lieutenant of the Art. Every scene demanded total physical control, long days in the mountains, movements choreographed like survival itself. He led the young cast, which included Jennifer Grey. Through that intensity, sometimes clashing, sometimes connecting, a spark that would resurface later in a much different story. But even as the acting took off, a deeper longing remained. In LA, he and his wife began to study acting with Milton Katselis, a legendary teacher known for pushing artists past their comfort zones. One day, a cellist in class invited them to perform a short piece together, an experiment in blending music and movement. For the first time in years, they danced. And when the final note faded, he broke down in tears. All the grief he'd buried since leaving ballet came rushing back. No matter how much success I had begun to have in the acting world, he said, nothing compared to the sheer exhilaration of dancing. That single class performance became the seed for something larger. With their friend Nicholas Gunn, a former Paul Taylor dancer, they began shaping a full length work through Camelot Productions, their teacher's program that gave artists space to create new plays. They called it Without a Word. It was part drama, part dance, a raw, physical conversation about dreams, loss, and what happens when the music stops. Every performance sold out. Audiences wept. Gene Kelly, Liza Minnelli, and countless others came to see it. Kelly told him afterward that there were almost no men left who could sing, dance, and act, and encouraged him to pursue musical venues. The show went on to win 6 LA Drama Critics Awards, including Best Play, Best Actress for his wife, and Best Actor for him. But the trophies weren't what mattered. Without a Word gave him back what he thought he'd lost, the pure joy of movement and the reminder that dance would always be home. After the TV miniseries North and South, his face was suddenly everywhere. Magazine covers, billboards, interviews. It was the kind of attention that could launch a movie career. And that is when a new script landed in his hands, Dirty Dancing. He read it in one evening at home, and he didn't like it. To him, it seemed fluffy, a light summer story about a girl at a resort. He and his wife both felt the same way. For 8 years, he had worked to separate himself from dancing roles, turning down teen idol projects, focusing on acting, trying to prove that he was more than a dancer who could act. So taking a dance film like this felt like stepping backward. But there was something about it, and about the man set to direct it. Emil Ardolino wasn't a typical Hollywood director. He came from the dance world, the man behind Baryshnikov at the White House, and the Oscar-winning He Makes Me Feel Like Dancin'. He knew how to film dancers in a way that showcased the work, the talent, and the choreography. If anyone could make a dance film with real soul, it was him. So, with encouragement from his wife, he took the leap. But the role wasn't handed to him. He had to audition. The first time around was a reading. He got through. The second, a dance. Writer Eleanor Bergstein, who'd based the story partly on her own life, got up herself to demonstrate what she wanted. But before long, he took the lead. He guided his partner, Jennifer Grey, already cast, by the way, through a few steps, slow at first, then quicker, helping her find her footing and her confidence. His wife, Lisa, was there too. Together, they demonstrated a lift they'd practiced countless times, the one that would later become the film's defining moment. When he lifted Jennifer, steady and controlled, their eyes met midair. The room went silent. That was it. The role was his. Filming would test every part of him: actor, dancer, athlete, partner. Lisa stayed up with him late into the night, rehearsing each scene, working on rewrites, helping him perfect the lifts and transitions. Choreographer Kenny Ortega brought jazz, swing, and Latin influence. And these were styles that ran in his blood from his mother's studio in Houston. But with every rehearsal, his knee reminded him of its history. He iced it nightly. He had to drain it often. And still, no matter what, he danced. All the dirty dancing was fine, he said, but he had to subordinate his ego for the role because he was a far more highly trained dancer than Johnny Castle, his character, ever could be. Yet he also understood the essence of a great partner. He said, quote, "The man's function is to bring no focus to himself. Your whole function is to make the woman beautiful, to make her movement ecstasy in flight," end quote. The only moment he was allowed to truly show his own technique came in the final scene, when he jumped from the stage, landed, did a double air tour, and dropped into a series of knee spins with the ease of someone born to move. When Dirty Dancing opened in August 1987, it was supposed to be a small movie, barely a $5 million budget, no major stars, but it caught fire. In 10 days, it made over $10 million. By year's end, it had crossed 60 million. Audiences went back again and again. It was the perfect storm, a role that let him show his humanity, his physical brilliance, his innate musicality, his strength, and his vulnerability. The discipline of years of dance met the rawness of lived emotion. It was the moment the world finally saw what had always been there, a performer whose movement carried both heat and heart, power and grace. After Dirty Dancing, the world wanted more. He followed it with Roadhouse, a movie that traded ballroom lifts for bar fights, but even there, dance found its way in. For the fight scenes, he trained with kickboxing legend Benny the Jet Urquidez. But with this particular fighting, nothing about it came naturally, really. The footwork felt foreign, the hits too rigid, his body wanted flow, not force. Then one day, Benny, remembering he was a dancer, showed up with a boombox. He hit play on Michael Jackson's Thriller. The beat filled the room, and something shifted. He stopped mimicking moves and started feeling them. The rhythm gave his strikes a pulse, timing, sync, control. Suddenly, the fight became choreography. From that day on, he didn't just throw punches, he moved through them. Then came Ghost, the movie that turned him into a global superstar. Even in that famous pottery scene, you could see the dancer in him, the way he moved in rhythm with Demi Moore. It wasn't just intimacy, it was choreography, a quiet duet. Next came Point Break and City of Joy, both highly physically demanding in their own ways. And in Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, he transformed again. Over 30 major, prominent, high profile actors auditioned for the lead, but only he could inhabit it so completely. He didn't just play the character, he moved as her. His dancers' understanding of rhythm, posture, stature, and presence made their performance authentic, not imitation or caricature. In 1994, he and his wife Lisa took the stage together at the World Music Awards, performing a pas de deux for Whitney Houston herself to her song, All the Man That I Need. Ballet met jazz met lyrical, two bodies moving as one. Millions watched as the world finally got to see what had always been there: the partnership, the trust, the years of shared discipline and love. Nearly a decade later, they brought that connection to the screen. They created a film inspired by their earlier stage work without a word. They called it One Last Dance. Lisa wrote, directed, and starred alongside him. It was about dancers, love, aging, purpose, and the way art both breaks you and saves you. By then, his body had endured multiple knee surgeries. He danced through pain, and they cut around the moments his face gave it away. But when he saw the finished film, he said it was everything they had hoped for. 2 decades of work, devotion, and resilience woven into one story. A love letter to dance to the life that had given them everything. He never wanted to be remembered just for his dancing. He wanted to be recognized as a serious actor. And many still see him that way. As well they should, deservedly so. But the truth is, none of us get to decide how the world remembers us. And maybe that's the beauty of it, because what dance revealed in him, the discipline, the gift, the generosity, the unspoken language, the soul behind the strength, became the thing that endures most. It's what made him immortal. His name, Patrick Swayze. And now you know the rest of the story. All right, Dance fam, I hope you enjoyed this episode on one of my favorite people ever, Patrick Swayze. I have a lump in my throat right now. I was emotional the entire time trying to get through this script. When I was writing this script, Patrick Swayze, I think for so many people, just holds a very special place, especially for Gen Xers like myself. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but I feel like our generation, we came up with Dirty Dancing and Ghost and Point Break and Roadhouse. He just epitomized so many different things to so many different people. You know, he could just be the tough guy. He could be the guy with humanity. He could be, you know, the romantic lead. He could be the everyday guy. He could be the dancer with strength. All of it. He just, I don't know. His loss at such a young age, it's, as I say this right now, it affects me. It's like, it's still for some reason present, his loss. Like, I feel it. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Well, actually, I know it's not just me, because in my research, I stumbled across so many interviews and YouTubes and blogs and articles about people who still talk about how much they miss him and love him. People like me who never even met him. And for me, as a young male dancer, actually, when Dirty Dancing came out, I hadn't started taking classes as a dancer yet, but I was always dancing and doing talent shows and all those things before I began training. And he really did serve as just an amazing role model of just masculinity and just being cool. You can be all those things for a boy and be a dancer too. And anyway, I just had to say that. If you enjoyed this episode, if you loved it, if you found yourself informed, educated, entertained, inspired, how could you not be? Oh my gosh. Please leave a comment. Tell me down below your thoughts. Give the video a like, share it, and don't forget to be subscribed or follow along. Now, I wanted to end on one thing. I read his autobiography that he co-wrote with his wife, Lisa Niemi. You know, I'm reading all these stories, and they're all, of course, you know, him having to give up the Elliott Feld Ballet and the potential to work with Baryshnikov because of his knee and all the things. And it's very, very detailed. But as I'm reading the book and I recognize, you know, my own patterns in my life, how sometimes you get close to something and there might be sabotage, but you don't realize it. I did read a lot of his stuff and think, I wonder if it was more than his injury, if there are other things in his mind that maybe kept him away from achieving some great, you know, successes. It reminds me of a book I recently read by Dr. Gay Hendricks, and he calls it the upper limit problem, where, you know, you get to a certain level of success and then somehow you don't go past it due to whatever underlying unconscious belief system. So anyway, as I'm reading the book, I get to a passage where Patrick says this: "After I became an actor, I realized my life had a certain pattern to it. In high school, I had worked to become the best football player I could be, and once I hit the top, winning a couple of football scholarships, I stopped playing. I then turned to gymnastics, and the same thing happened. I was working toward the Junior Olympics at the top of my game, and then I stopped competing. At Elliott Feld, I was offered the chance to perform at the pinnacle of the ballet world, dancing on stage with the legendary Mikhail Baryshnikov. And once I'd made it there, I left. In all these cases, my decision to leave came partly because of injury. But I also realized that in reaching these pinnacles, I feared that whatever came next would be a letdown. After you make the Olympics, what's next? Your face on a Wheaties box? After you dance with Baryshnikov, what's next? I always needed a goal, something to push toward, and I feared what would happen to me if I reached the top of a given profession and then had nowhere else to go. But acting was different. For the first time, I was throwing myself into something that could never be mastered. Acting wasn't like sports. You didn't win the world championship and then settle into retirement. No matter how great an actor you are, you can always be better. Every role is different, and the learning curve is endless. I was excited to find something that never stopped challenging me and humbled by the chance to make a living at it. So that is taken again from his book, The Time of My Life. And I read that and I thought, aha, I knew there was a little more to it, than maybe just the injury. And as a dancer myself, who has been on a healing journey for 3 years now, I've done so much work. And if you aren't watching my docu-series, I'll leave a link to it over here on YouTube and down below in the episode description as well, because it chronicles my return to dance after 3 decades away. And I'm about to release, or shortly release, the healing part of the journey. And ooh, it is a lot, and I can't wait to share. And my goal, as always, is to serve dancers and to be inspiring in general to anyone who would like to perhaps return to a past love. All right, dance fam, that's all I got. Patrick Swayze, if somehow your soul is aware, I just want to say thank you. God bless you and your soul. And see you guys next time.